The new Lord of the Rings main set spoilers have finished, and there are so many cool legends for EDH. So many that I think people are forgetting that there's a lot of non-legendary creatures that are awesome for Commander. So presented here are my top 10 best cards for the 99 of your Commander deck. And I'm going to start with some honorable mentions. Ringsight is a 3-mana Dimir sorcery that searches your library for a card that shares a color with a legendary creature you control. I don't think this card is super powerful or anything, but I actually think it's a great budget tutor. Since it's an uncommon, this card's going to be really cheap, and if you're in Dimir colors and you have your commander in play, or really if you're in any colors and you have your commander in play, this just searches your deck for any card that shares a color with it. You can't grab lands, but it's basically demonic tutor. It's not going to break anything and it's not crazy powerful, but it's a good budget tutor, and I like it for that. Another honorable mention is Lost Isle Calling, a 2-mana enchantment that gets a verse counter whenever you scry, and then for 6 mana you can exile it and draw a card for each verse counter on it. Then if it had 7 or more verse counters, you get to take an extra turn. You can only use this at sorcery speed though. I think this card's super fun for scrying tribal, which we are slowly getting more and more support for, and there's some scrying commanders in this set that are pretty cool. I don't know if we're quite there yet, but I do like seeing new scrying cards every set, and I hope that in a few more sets we'll have a proper scrying deck. Plus, this one is pretty strong if you pull it off. Drawing 7 cards and taking an extra turn is crazy strong. It is a lot of mana and a lot of investment, so it's definitely not busted, but it's a cool card. On to the top 10 list. These are the cards I think you should be picking up from the set because I think they're going to go in the most commander decks. And I'm starting off with a Mana Rock, Phial of Galadriel, a 3-mana legendary artifact that taps for a mana of any color. But also, if you would draw a card while you have no cards in hand, draw 2 instead. If you would gain life while you have 5 or less life, gain twice that life instead. So I think this card is actually pretty strong. It's a 3-mana Mana Rock, which is a bit slow, it's not amazing, but the fact that it can draw you cards for free is awesome, and it draws you cards when you need them the most, when you're hellbent. The life gain portion is a bit niche, but it can still be useful. Not only is this good in many decks that just might struggle to draw cards, mono white, mono red, but if you're a dedicated hellbent deck, then this effect is really good. Or if you're some sort of life loss deck, if you try to pay 35 life and then gain 35 back with Children of Korlos, then the fact that this turns that 35 into 70 is crazy strong. I like this card a lot. I'll be testing it out in some of my lower power casual decks and seeing how often that first effect triggers. If it happens once or twice a game, it's probably worth it over, say, a Felwar Stone. Call of the Ring is a 2-mana enchantment that has the ring tempt you at the start of your upkeep. Whenever you choose a creature as your ring bearer, you may pay 2 life if you do draw a card. If you have a creature in play, this will basically draw you a card every single turn. It's kind of like a Phyrexian Arena, but for 2 mana. And then, if this is in a ring tempting deck, you could be drawing a ton of cards a turn. Each time you tempt, it's pretty much going to just draw you an extra card. And it's not mandatory. If you don't want to pay the life, you don't have to. I think in any creature-focused black deck, this is probably worth it, just because it'll buff up a creature and draw you cards. Number 8 is the Lighted Halfling. 1 green for a 1/2 human citizen. Tap to add it colorless, and tap to add 1 mana of any color. Spend this only to cast legendary spells, but that spell can't be countered. So the floor of this card is it's a mana dork, which isn't bad. That's actually pretty fine. It only taps for colorless, but it's a 1/2, so it's kind of above curve. And then, if you're in any green commander deck that relies heavily on the commander, you really need to get your commander in play, you don't want it to get countered, then this is basically like a Cavern of Souls. It's just a way to get your commander down uncounterably. And you can play this in a legend tribal deck. If you're chock full of legends, this is going to be really powerful. And honestly, with the amount of legends that they print these days, there's a good chance that your deck probably has like 5 or 6 of them in there anyway, which means this will be able to use its second mode on definitely more than your commander. I think the Lighted Halfling is going to be in a lot of green commander decks. At number 7 is Horn of Mark. 2 mana for a legendary artifact. Whenever 2 or more creatures you control attack a player, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature from among them and put it into your hand. put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. And because of the way this is worded, if you attack each opponent with 2 creatures, you can trigger this 3 times. And that's honestly so powerful. Drawing 3 cards off this turn is really good. Just be careful if you're putting this in a token deck that uses a lot of instants and sorceries to generate tokens, you might whiff a little bit on those top 5 since it only grabs creatures, but there's a good chance that in your top 5 you're going to have a creature if you have a reasonable number of them in your deck. I think this card's really powerful, and especially if you need to find a specific creature in the 99, going 15 deep is really good. I think Horde of Mark is going to show up in a lot of like Elf Ball decks, or human decks, many tribal decks honestly, or any type of deck that plays a lot of creatures that make tokens. Let me know what tribe you think works best with the Horn in the comments below. I'm thinking elves, but if there's something that is even better, let me know. Next we have Lost to Legend. White for an instant that puts target non-land historic permanent into its owner's library, 4th from the top. This kind of reminds me of Unexpectedly Absent, where you can put a card onto the top of their library. Sadly, this doesn't hit non-legendary creatures, which does make it a little more niche, but I do think it's pretty good. At worst, it's going to be any artifact or your opponent's commander. And there are some fun tricks you can do with this. If your opponent goes to crack a fetch land, you can respond by using Lost to Legend on some artifact. It goes 4th from the top, and then their fetch land resolves, causing them to search and then shuffle their library, meaning whatever you got rid of could have been shuffled away, never to be seen again. I think Lost to Legend is a pretty good artifact removal spell, especially because it gets around indestructible, and the fact that it can hit your opponent's commander is just gravy. At number 5, I have Last March of the Ents. Green 6 for a uncounterable sorcery. Draw cards equal to the greatest toughness among creatures you control. Then put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. Now, even though this can't be countered, they can remove your creatures in response to you casting this, which can turn off the card draw, but you are always going to be able to dump your entire hand, which is crazy strong. I mean, if you get 2 4-drops out, you're on par with mana. You spent 8 mana for 2 4-drops. And then anything more than that, you're cheating on mana. And if you ever do live the dream and draw like 5 cards and then play 5 creatures, probably just gonna win that game. I think this is going to be an absolute game ender in a lot of casual EDH games. If you're a green deck that ramps a lot and has a lot of big creatures, you're gonna want a copy of this. At number 4 is Mithril Coat, a 3-mana legendary artifact equipment with Flash Indestructible equipped 3, and Mithril Coat automatically attaches to a legendary creature you control when it enters the battlefield, and it gives the equipped creature indestructible. So this is pretty comparable to Darksteel Plate, except Mithril Coat has Flash and equips for free when it enters, which means even though the equip cost is technically higher, Darksteel Plate is probably worse. Mithril Coat will show up in Voltron decks, any deck that really wants to protect the commander. I think this card's just really good and gonna show up in tons of commander decks. At number 3, I got Spiteful Banditry. Red X for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, it deals X damage to each creature, and whenever one or more creatures your opponent's control dies, create a treasure token. This ability triggers only once each turn. This is actually one of the more expensive cards from the set, and I think it's a bit overhyped. Now, it's still number 3 on my list. I think it's very powerful and really good in EDH, but it's not the board wipe that a lot of people might think it is. If the highest toughness on board is 5, then you need this to be 7 mana to actually clear the board. 7 mana for a board wipe is already pretty steep. You will get 1 treasure back, which is nice, but I actually think this is best when you use it for 2 to kill 1 utility creature, get a treasure back, and then you're in a sacrifice deck that can utilize the treasures, that can kill and ping down your opponent's creatures so that you're getting 1 treasure every single turn to get 4 every turn cycle. Lots of aristocrats, sacrifice decks are gonna really love this card. I think it's gonna be super strong in treasure decks as well. Seems really good. And if you have big creatures, it's a lot better because then playing it for 3 and killing all small stuff doesn't hurt you at all, and you can get an extra treasure out of it. I like Spiteful Banditry, but I think it's a tad overhyped, so I would wait for the set to come out, and hopefully it'll drop in price. At number 2 is Dawn of a New Age. 1 for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you get a hope counter on it for each creature you control. At the beginning of your end step, remove a hope counter. If you do, draw a card. Then, if there are no hope counters, sacrifice it, you gain 4 life. Wow, this card is good. If you have 1 creature in play, it's 2 mana, draw a card, gain 4, which is a pretty decent cantrip, especially for mono white. If you have 2 creatures in play, it'll draw 2 cards and gain you 4 life. That's better than Night's Whisper. You don't get the cards immediately, but at least you get 1 on your end steps, or at least drawing 1 card the turn it comes down. And then if there are more creatures in play, this card is really good card advantage. I honestly don't think we've seen this type of card advantage in mono white before. And it just needs you to have creatures on board. That's so easy to do. And then, of course, you could flicker it to reset it and put more counters on it. Or you can proliferate those counters and keep it going. Throw this in your Atraxa deck and always draw an extra card every end step. This seems like an awesome card that's going to be in so many commander decks. This is a casual commander all-star, but I don't think it's as good as number 1 on the list. The One Ring is a better card advantage engine, I think. 4 mana for a legendary artifact. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you gain protection from everything until your next turn. At the beginning of your upkeep, lose 1 life for each burden counter on the One Ring. Tap, put a burden counter on the One Ring, draw a card for each burden counter on the One Ring. So you play it, you can tap it to draw a card, and then next turn you lose a life. And then you can tap it to draw 2 cards, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5. Yeah, you're losing life, but drawing 4 cards for tapping this, or 5 cards, is really, really strong. And oh my god, you don't lose the life when you tap it. It's only on your upkeep. So if you have ways to untap this with like Clock of Omens, you could potentially tap it, draw 1 card, then 2, then 3, all on 1 turn. And then you're only going to lose 3 life, even though you've just drawn 6 cards. You can double up the draw with Tawanos. Also, if you have any way to bounce it to your hand, you can then play it again, gain protection from everything again, reset the counters on it. This card's ridiculous, and it's indestructible, so as far as card advantage goes, it's pretty hard to get rid of. And it's colorless, so it can go in almost any deck. I mean, I think the One Ring is just straight up the best card in the 99 from this set. It's just going to show up in so many decks. It's so powerful, and it's an artifact with an activated ability. I cannot wait to cheese that. With all that being said, there's a lot of really awesome cards for the 99 in this set. Let me know your favorite in the comments below. Let me know if there's any that I missed on this list. Did I miss anything about any of the cards on this list? What are some good uses of them? I'd love to hear in the comments below. Thank you so very much for watching. Stay tuned because I'll probably do a video on some of the legendary creatures as well pretty soon, and the commander set, and there's a lot going on with this. Stay tuned for more. Subscribe if you want to see that.